After the queen found a slug in her food, the kitchen staff received a priceless response. As ruling monarch of the United Kingdom, naturally the queen gets only the best food around. She picks from a menu book, and meals are created for her. She basically has her own personal restaurant. But as with any dining establishment, things can occasionally go wrong. Once, the queen even found an unwelcome, and slightly dangerous, guest lurking in her salad. The queen's eating habits are a source of fascination to many royal family fans. Seeing as how she can essentially ask for anything she likes, what are her favorite dishes? What are her least favorite? And what's it like working below decks at the royal palaces, whipping up the finest meals for the monarch? Over the years, many people have answered those questions. Palace chefs have given interviews to British newspapers. In 2013, Darren McGrady, who for 15 years cooked for the royal family, spoke to the Daily Telegraph. He said that generally, new chefs were trained up to cook the family recipes, with a chance for promotion later. McGrady himself began his palace career as the person who peeled carrots for the horses. But he rose up the ranks to become a chef to the Queen, Prince Philip, Princess Diana and more. It was a job that required plenty of know-how. Although you're cooking for 300 staff and kings and presidents, you're also cooking for a family, he explained. The Queen and Prince Philip, McGrady said, are two pensioners with particular likes and dislikes. On the Queen's list of no's are strong-smelling things. You'd never put garlic in the Queen's menu, for example, or strong onions or paprika, because she hates them, he explained. She prefers bland and simple fare. McGrady ran through a typical everyday menu for the Queen. For breakfast, she has a simple cereal such as cornflakes. Lunch, on the table at 1 p.m., is a simple fish or chicken dish. For dinner, at 8 in the evening, she will have meat or fish with salad. It all sounds normal, but it's cooked to the highest of standards. And the menus are written in French. Why? It's a tradition among royals, and the Queen likes it that way. Her menu book is of the utmost importance. Every dish goes into the Queen's menu book, with 2 options for every course, McGrady informed the Daily Telegraph. She puts a line through the one she doesn't want. The Queen communicates with her chefs via the menu books, sometimes in a slightly snarky way. Once I included a strawberry dessert called Veiled Farmer's Daughter, which I'd read about in the Daily Telegraph, McGrady recollected. I got a note back from her asking, who or what are the Veiled Farmer's Daughters? I sent her the recipe and she passed it. The other royals had very particular tastes as well. Prince Andrew, McGrady said, had a love for a certain fruit. Every Christmas, he'd get sent a gift of mangoes, and he'd come into the kitchen bellowing, "Where are my mangoes?" He used to count them every day, he loved them. As for Prince Charles, he insisted on organic food. Prince William and Prince Harry were 2 boys who loved burgers and pizza. Actually, their adoration of fast food has been well documented. In 2018, Princess Diana's former butler Paul Burrell told the Daily Mirror that Diana would take her sons for McDonald's every Saturday night before watching TV with them. Believe it or not, the Queen and other royals actually help in the kitchen sometimes. Diana cooked for herself occasionally, and at royal barbecues both the Queen and Philip take part. Philip cooks the prepared meat, and the Queen helps to wash up, although the plates then get cleaned again later on. McGrady isn't the only insider who's spoken about royal participation in the kitchens. When William and Harry were quite young, they used to like to come into the kitchen and we did stuff with them like cookies and meringues, former royal chef Carolyn Robb told Racked in 2015. As they got older they were really quite interested in learning to cook even in college. Robb also spoke about the Queen's reasons for avoiding garlic. The only thing that was forbidden was garlic, she said when asked if there was anything she was told never to make. And the reason for that was that they obviously did a lot of public engagements and were in close proximity to people and never wanted to have garlic. That seems fair enough, no one wants to smell garlic on the Queen's breath, after all. I think she has a fairly simple, traditional English diet, Robb said. I remember cooking pheasant on one occasion. Like Prince Charles, she enjoyed eating produce that was from one of her estates and things that were home-produced. When they were home, they preferred really simple, fresh, homemade meals. We had things like wild mushrooms, though, that we'd actually pick on the estate in Scotland, Rob went on. Each summer we'd go out there and pick them and dry them and freeze them so we'd have them throughout the year. Also, the royals are surprisingly thrifty. Prince Charles, it transpires, is a big fan of recycling and hates food to go to waste. If there were leftovers, they'd be used one way or another, Rob said. If not for him, then rehashed and used for a meal the following day. But we were always quite careful, he never wanted to have huge amounts of food on the plate. McGrady has given the media other glimpses into the royal kitchens, too. In 2016 he spoke to the Daily Mail. The Queen is not a foodie at all, he said. She eats to live, it's Prince Philip that lives to eat. He loves food, he's interested in food, he wants to know where it comes from. The Queen, not so much. However, the Queen did love to host banquets, according to McGrady. She'd oversee the full menu, choose what she wanted, do we have enough pheasant, grouse, partridge, he said. She loved the hosting side of the event. Garden parties were huge, we'd have to do so much food, scones and pastries, ice cream made fresh. McGrady shared an anecdote about a soufflé crisis he'd once witnessed. A chef was tasked for making the dessert for the Queen, but it went wrong. The Queen was in the next room with a guest. He put it in the oven, and when he opened the oven the soufflé hadn't risen. So he lifted it out of the oven and dropped it, called the Queen's page and said, "Sorry I dropped it, it will have to be ice cream instead." McGrady also spoke to Marie Claire in 2017 and talked about the Queen's eating habits some more. The Queen liked eating birds from her own estate, but her favorite food of all was a delicious sweet treat. She loves chocolate. That was her favorite, and it has to be dark chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the better, the royal chef said. Despite the Queen's tendency to choose perfectly ordinary food, sometimes the things she uses to eat that food are anything but. She has a bejeweled plate for her fruit. The dish was encrusted in diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. 30-something years ago it was valued at £500,000, McGrady said. Some slightly more scandalous stories have come out over the years about the eating habits of the royals. In 2006 a rumor spread that Prince Charles required 7 soft-boiled eggs made for him every day, in case he couldn't find one he liked. Clarence House actually denied it, putting out a statement saying it wasn't true. It seems those who have access to the royal kitchens love to talk about what they see there. And perhaps the man who did this best was a cook by the name of Charles Oliver. Born in 1884, he followed in his father's footsteps to become a staff member to Queen Victoria. After her he served George VI and later Queen Elizabeth II. Throughout his life as a royal servant, Oliver collected recipes and anecdotes with the intention of having them published after he passed away. In 2003 the book of his diaries and commentary was released, Dinner at Buckingham Palace. It serves as a great guide to exactly what the royals get up to during mealtimes. The royals before Queen Elizabeth varied between food lovers and those who, like her, had a more simple palate. Queen Victoria was one of the latter. She enjoyed pies and soups, although sometimes she did give into her era's love of foreign food. She had a French chef for a while and would sometimes eat Indian curries. Her son Edward, though, ate exactly how you'd expect a high-class historical royal to. He enjoyed lobster salad with his breakfast and was served a whopping 8 courses when he sat down for lunch. But even that wasn't enough for him. Dinner featured 12 courses, which included cheese, soup and plenty of meat. Historically, British kings seem to have a habit of overeating. Back in 1135 King Henry I died from devouring too many lampreys, a river creature very popular among the kings of the Middle Ages. Worse, he did it after his doctor had already told him not to. A bit of an embarrassing way to go for a monarch. Queen Elizabeth's mother had a love of luxurious food too, just not quite at the same levels. In 2012 a book of her recipes were published, and it's easy to see where the Queen gets her sweet tooth from. The Queen Mother enjoyed vast quantities of ice cream and a type of soufflé that contains gold leaf. Oliver's book features some great stories about the minutiae of royal life. Possibly the most memorable, however, goes like this: when clearing away after a royal meal the footmen always look for the notebook in which the Queen or Prince Philip jot down comments for the kitchen, Oliver wrote. The book is always left on a small round wooden table. Once, on a torn-off top sheet, the footman found the dead body of a slug. "I found this in the salad, could you eat it?" the Queen had written on the pad, Oliver wrote. How the unwelcome guest found its way into the Queen's food, perhaps no one will ever know. But at least she had a sense of humor about it. Slugs are a common garden pest, and they don't have many fans. However, when they come into contact with food, the results can be genuinely deadly. In 2018, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced that 12 people in the U.S. had gotten sick that year from accidentally eating slugs that harbored diseases. So it's no wonder the Queen was somewhat annoyed. Hopefully, the staff took steps to prevent it from happening again. Luckily, there are many quick and easy ways to remove slugs from homegrown food. For a start, gardeners can simply pick the slugs off the plants every morning, ideally before the sun comes up. Oliver didn't dwell on the incident, seeing as how the Queen didn't either. Presumably, the dead slug was quietly disposed of. Instead, Oliver talked some more about the function of the Queen's dining room notebook. Mostly, the book remains blank, as the Queen is not fussy about food, he said. However, when she has a guest to an informal lunch and they reveal definite likes and dislikes, such as an objection to fried potatoes or Brussels sprouts, the Queen will make a discreet note for future reference, the author went on. This is duly recorded by the kitchen and remembered, should the guest come again. So if you ever attend luncheon with the Queen, she'll be taking note of what you do and don't eat. Probably best not to ask for slugs. You can also expect the best wine at the palace, as Philip is the one who sends feedback on the drinks. He's known to mark wine bottles with good or very good. In 2018, the slug story did the rounds on the internet. Most new outlets were very amused. If you ever have the pleasure of hosting Her Majesty the Queen for dinner at your house, please note that she has no interest in eating snails, so don't even try. Cosmopolitan wrote. The Queen was less than thrilled to find a slug in one of her meals, and dragged the chef via a scathing note. The slug story wasn't the only one discussed in dinner at Buckingham Palace. The late Oliver also talked about the aforementioned habit of the royals to help out with the cooking and cleaning. The royal family would often go out and have a barbecue picnic, bringing along their friends and of course members of staff. Once his barbecue grill was glowing, Prince Philip would produce a rapid succession of sizzling chops, steaks and sausages for guests and attendant staff, Oliver recollected. If there was a nearby stream, the Queen would also insist on doing the washing up, much to the dismay of the staff. It seems Oliver was essentially the first royal kitchen insider to spill all. But now, former palace staff do the same thing quite frequently. In 2018, chef Mark Flanagan appeared in an ITV documentary called Queen of the World and discussed what he thought the Queen's favorite meal was. It seems that the Queen may be coming around to spicy food after all. According to Flanagan, she's recently started eating Caribbean dishes. The callaloo soup was an absolute sensation, he informed the documentary makers. I had email after email telling me that it must now feature more regularly. So now, thanks in part to all the cooks who have given interviews or published books over the years, royal fans know what to expect on the menu should they ever be invited to dine with the Queen. Lots of delicious food is on offer, with your own tastes taken into account, and absolutely no slugs are involved. Thank you for watching video.